No doubt gonna lay my claim. You put in work and just wait and let it all unfold. Straight from the soul, now I stick to my goal.
Welcome everyone to the first ever edition of Unrooted Baseball Style, and my guest here for the first show is head coach of the baseball team, Jake McKinley. Jake, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
You ready to be the trial monkey for this show here?
Let's do it.
Hopefully it doesn't fall into the ground. That's for you guys to figure out. All right, so let's start off with trying to get to know Jake a little bit better. For those of you who don't know, he was a pitcher and first baseman at Bethany University, an NAIA institution. He graduated in 2006. Jake, this is your fourth year at Menlo, but your roots in the NAIA run over 10 years deep. What changes have you seen in NAIA baseball over that time frame?
I think it's better. You know, when I played, there were some good players, but the level of play has elevated a ton. I remember Stephen Vogt was a guy I played against in college, and he was kind of the elite player in the NAIA, I would say, at the time. But I just think from top to bottom, it's just a more organized organization, and you know, the recruiting aspect of it all has changed so greatly with the evolution of video and recruiting services. So I think just the quality of player in the NAIA has gotten better over time.
Immediately after your playing days, you joined as an assistant coach at Bethany. What was it like coaching for your alma mater?
It was a great honor, you know, it really was. I had a great experience at Bethany. I had great coaches and awesome teammates, and you know, to be in there as a coach was something I really cherished. And I honestly didn't go into coaching thinking that was going to be a career for me. I was still playing professional baseball. I was an independent ball at the time, and it was just something to do in the off season, really, and kind of a easy way to stay in shape, being out of practice. But probably about 2 to 3 months into it, I started to see the writing on the wall. This is probably what I was going to end up doing with my life. And you know, as a player, I was pretty average, to be honest with you. So I fell in love with it pretty quick. I had a great mentor, a head coach that gave me a ton of responsibilities right off the bat. And I think if it wasn't for him, I probably wouldn't be here today. A guy named Chris Lewis, who's actually the head coach up at Dawson Community College in Montana right now. So it was a privilege just to be a part of that program.
Now, Menlo has one alma mater on the coaching staff this year, and Dane Fujinaka. Dane was the catcher of last year's team. Now he's an assistant coach. Has that experience of coaching at Bethany helped you relate to Dane's situation this year?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think a lot of coaches would shy away from hiring a guy that's immediately removed from playing because there's some challenges there. I mean, and I remember it at Bethany, we played with those guys a year ago, so it's sometimes a little bit of a tricky balance, and there can be some blurry lines. But I think as time has gone on, really what I care about when we make hires for our staff is we just want to hire people that give us a competitive advantage. And Dane is that. I mean, he's going to be a great head coach down the road. And working at Bethany right after I played, and having so much responsibility and given so much autonomy by our head coach really was a good learning lesson. I mean, that's how you learn to become a head coach, is you just have to do stuff. You have to get your hands dirty. And I love giving Dane responsibilities, and he always makes it count. He does a super job.
One important part of your coaching past came in 2010 when you spent a summer in Perth, Australia. You were a scout, coach, and player development officer for Major League Baseball. Tell me about that experience and the impact it had on your coaching development.
Yeah, I think first of all, it was cool to go to Australia for a few months and just do baseball-related stuff. It shows you how big the world is. And, you know, when you fly in America over towns and cities and you look out your window, you see a lot of baseball fields. It's our pastime, and they're everywhere, but it's not quite the same there. Yeah, there's baseball fields from place to place, but a lot of the ways that they train for baseball is, you know, on footy fields or rugby fields, and you makeshift it into a baseball field with throw-down bases and portable mounds, and it just didn't matter to them. They love to play. So it was a good experience for me, and it was certainly an eye-opener in regards to how lucky we are in America to have such great access to baseball. We're there. I mean, they're starving for baseball. People will drive 2 hours to go, you know, buy baseball equipment or just go to a baseball practice. So it was eye-opening in terms of how lucky we have it here in America.
One thing that many people might not know about you, Jake, is that you happen to be a decent bowler. Now, folks, let me tell you, we've had a bowl-off before, a little bit down the road. I think it was in Sunnyvale, as a matter of fact, and we split it. We were both, we took one. I took one. He took one. So he knows how to bowl a little bit. How did you get into bowling, and what are the similarities between it and baseball?
So I got into it because I was the volunteer assistant at Sac State before I got to Menlo. I was an unpaid coach, and I think when you're an unpaid coach and you're young and you're single, you have to get creative with how you have your fun. So I was just driving home from a practice one day, and I lived by a bowling alley, so I went there and I started throwing the ball. I couldn't keep it on the lanes at first, and so I had to get like a 6-pound pink ball just so I could control it a little bit, And then I graduated to the 8-pound orange ball, and then some guy in the pro shop saw me. He gave me some pointers, and the next thing you know, I owned 2 bowling balls and a rolling bowling bag, and I was in leagues and doing tournaments. So I really enjoy it. I think it's very similar to baseball too, because in this game you can do everything right and you can fail, and it's extremely frustrating, and it can break your spirits if you allow it to. And bowling's really the same thing. Sometimes you throw a shot and it looks perfect out of your hand, and it's going right for the pocket, crushes the pocket, and there's just that 10-pin just staring at you. It didn't go down for whatever reason, and it's frustrating, So it's important that you can really be present on your next shot, and you can make sure that you have to find a way to flush that last shot. You got to put it behind you. And believe me, I've had some games where I was going really good in bowling, and that 10-pin, I don't know, it just stayed up, and the rest of the game collapses, and you can't let that happen. It's very similar to baseball in that respect.
And you realize how much of a mental game it is as well, because in baseball, the only thing sometimes that you can control is what's going on inside you. Bowling's the same thing, because you're the only one out there, the only one that can influence the game.
Absolutely, and I've been fortunate to do bowling, as an individual, but also on some teams. So there is still that team aspect at times in that sport as well, that if you can't be present on this particular shot, you're going to influence your teammates negatively too. So I think there's great parallels, and I actually think bowling's made me a way better coach.
Now let's transition over to this year's team a little bit. 2017 is shaping up to be quite an interesting year for the Oaks. The first thing to notice is Oaktown. It's a new YouTube show that the team produced on a weekly basis earlier on in the fall. Whose idea was it to get the show rolling, and what were some of the ideas behind it?
Yeah, I guess it all started, Trevor Payne, our new hitting coach, was just in the office one day looking at drone videos and saying how much he liked drone videos, how cool they were. So, then we had the idea of maybe, we'll film team defense with it, because you can see everything from that particular camera shot. So we got the drone, and those guys were flying it around, and then Dane Fujinaka had made a comment this would be really cool in a reality show, and we think we have pretty interesting kids on this team, and so it started out with just a GoPro, and then it turned into other camera shots, but really the whole thing ended up getting driven by Dane. Dane did the editing portion of it. He was the creative mind behind so much of what went on in that, and he did a bang-up job, and I think it's really attracted a lot of people to the program. So I guess the idea maybe started a little bit with Trevor's love for drone shots, but Dane took it by the horns, and he rallied a lot of people around him, and got a lot of participation there to make it what it is now.
Go check it out if you haven't yet. Oaktown on YouTube. I believe there's 6 episodes on YouTube?
6 episodes so far, and I'm hearing some buzz that there's going to be some bi-weekly spring episodes too.
There we go. You don't want to miss those, I tell you that for sure. 35 wins. That's what your team did one season ago, and you finished 3rd place in the Golden State Athletic Conference playoffs down in Westmont. This year's a little bit different. You have a brand new coaching staff, and several key cogs are gone on the team. What excites you about the team this year?
I think more than anything, it's really the chemistry aspect of the group. We've always been fortunate to have good players. We've had good people in the program. But I can say in 11 years of coaching, it's the tightest knit group of kids I've ever coached. And they're probably the friendliest. They care about each other. They're just a pleasure to be around every day, to be honest with you. So, when you go to battle, maybe that's a dramatic statement, but, when you compete with people that love each other, they care about each other, they work really hard, they're prepared, and they'll do everything they can to help each other win a game. but also do so with respect. It's just exciting to be around, and I think a lot of times that can get underrated when you're measuring a team. It's really easy just to look at the talent aspect, and we have plenty of talent, don't get me wrong. But what excites me most, honestly, is just the personality of our kids. They're incredible, and there's never been a day where I've like dreaded going out to practice. I love being around them. It's honestly the part of the day that doesn't feel like work ever.
Now, we've had our individual talks about pitching staff being the strength of this year's team, which in years past that just hasn't been the case. Talk about the depth of the rotation, the bullpen that you have, and how it can carry the squad.
Yeah, the pitching, at least at first glance, it appears to be very deep and very talented. And I think in small college baseball, good bullpens aren't easy to come across. I mean, you kind of have to piece it together in the back end of games, and we're very fortunate that we have that depth. There's a saying in baseball that you can't have too much good pitching, and I think we're seeing that this year. And I think a lot of times in the past we've had to, ride our starters to the finish line, so to speak. And we've had to maybe push them a little bit too much early in the season, where I just don't feel like that's going to be the case with this season. So what the depth is going to provide ultimately, I think, is an opportunity to be healthy at the finish line, and to be at full strength from both a starting and bullpen perspective. But the pitchers have done a good job. They've created some identity for themselves. They throw strikes. We've got some guys that have velocity. We've got some guys that have movement. But it's a well-rounded group, and like the other guys on the team, they're a fun group to be around.
Part of what has made Oaks baseball exciting over the past several years has been the way that you guys can smack the ball at the yard, or as you guys like to call, feed the trees. Last year alone, you guys had 57 home runs. That was 6th best in the entire nation, but you lost 4 of your top home run hitters from a season ago. Is this offense going to be different this year?
I guess you never know going into the season. We have guys that are fully capable of hitting the ball out of the ballpark, but I think you have to kind of see what you have, a few games into the season and adjust the best you can. One thing I can say about this team is there's a lot of speed. We can really run, and I can't think of a single guy on the base paths that would like clog up the bases, because Andrew Cox doesn't have to run, because you get to run for your catcher in the NAIA. So I can't think of a guy that would clog up the bases, and I think we're going to have an opportunity to steal some bags and maybe push the limits a little bit on the base paths. So I don't think scoring runs is going to be an issue for this group. And then hitting for power, yes, we did lose. We lost 50 home runs between 3 guys with Urseg, Dudo, and Jim Yanni. So that's never easy to replace. But I do think in the recruiting process we did a good job of getting some guys that are going to hold their own as it relates to hitting for power.
An underrated improvement of your team last year was the defense. Normally the defense has kind of been a weakness to the team, but last year just committing 1 error per game, which was a 100% improvement from the season before. What are some of the ways that you and the staff go about handling the defense, practicing it, doing drills, and all sort of stuff?
Yeah, I think a lot of it was an adjustment maybe we made a year ago in the fall. We're just placing a bigger emphasis on defense. This is a fun place to play baseball as a position player, because for whatever reason in Atherton, if you get it up in the air, it flies here. So I think there's this temptation to just go kind of swing it all day, and we don't want to take that away from our players. I played first base, which was a power hitting position. I love to take BP, and so we don't ever want to take that away from our guys. We want them to have fun at practice, but blending defense into that is super important to us. So I think a lot of times opponents might look at us and think like, all those guys try to do is hit the ball out of the ballpark, and that couldn't be further from the truth. Our number one emphasis as a program is defense, and it has been for probably about a year and a half now, and that was an adjustment that we made, and I don't see us ever turning back, because there's a lot of different ways to score runs, and the reality of the situation is in our conference, everybody has good pitching, everybody has a good Friday guy, and runs are at a premium at times. So if you can't play defense, it's going to be tough to win. So it's without question our number one emphasis when we train.
You might not be able to tell it right now, but Cartan Field, where we're sitting right now in the outfield, is kind of underwater. It has been absolutely pouring here the past 2 weeks, almost nonstop. But Cartan Field is going to eventually be undergoing some renovations if the rain ever lets up a little bit. And they're in preparation for the GSAC playoffs, which are going to be held right here at Cartan Field. For those who don't know, what are some of the renovations and how is it going to impact the games, if at all?
Well, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to excavate our dugouts. We're going to excavate the backstop area. We're going to move the dugouts down the outfield lines a little bit more and a little bit further back to create more foul territory. Our foul territory situation right now is very minimal, almost to the point of dangerous. And then the current backstop is actually, it's a painted chain link. So, from the experience of a fan, there's a lot of blind spots here. So as we do this, the backstop's only going to be a 3-foot tall backstop, and it'll be a 40-foot tall net. So, from the fan experience, it's going to enhance tremendously because the dugout's being moved. It's going to allow more seats to be put in. So it not only enhances the look of the field, the safety of the field, but it also enhances the fan experience. And that's just the first phase of this. Eventually, replacing our outfield wall, putting in a scoreboard, netting around the field to protect, all these cars out here eventually, right? So it's going to be an exciting time for the program. I mean, we already have a beautiful place to play, and we put a lot of work into this field every day, and our kids and coaches do a super job on it. But we're excited to move into a new generation of this facility.
Now, focusing in on the Golden State Athletic Conference, it is a fully loaded baseball conference. 3 teams are ranked in the top 20. That's not including you guys. What is your outlook on the conference, and who do you think is going to be the strongest competition this year?
You're absolutely right. It's a very tough conference, and I don't mean just up at the top. I mean, even 1 through 9, everybody has starting pitching that can beat anybody on any given day. So we know going into any game it's going to be a battle. Naturally Westmont is probably the team I would say that everyone's maybe looking out for, just because they were so talented on the mound last year, and they're returning so many guys, and they're so well coached, and they play great defense, so they're always tough to beat. Vanguard, coming off a couple really, really good years back to back. They're super well coached too. They're always tough, and Masters, they're always in it at the end of the race too. And Biola got a ton better last year. They were a thorn in our side, to be honest with you. They were a really tough team to play. So, and then the eighth place team, they swept us last year. So there's no easy games in this conference. And I think a lot of times what we learned is that it's going to come down to your ability to pitch late in games and your ability to play defense late in games. So it'll be a battle.
The conference play starts a little bit earlier this year on the schedule. You have a February 10th series in Biola. Do you prefer conference games earlier in the schedule, or would you rather them be backloaded at the end?
We have a saying in our program of just who cares. I guess, you'd want them a little bit later, especially with this weather we're getting. We've only practiced on a field twice. We're getting creative in the tennis courts and indoor facilities, and we invented a baseball field over in the tennis courts the other day just to work on our some of our defensive stuff. So, but honestly, it doesn't matter. I trust that, when the first pitch is thrown of any game, these guys are going to be prepared, and they're going to be going into it with confidence and trust in one another. So, whatever happens moving forward.
All right, time to wrap up the first show, and we're going to do it with a little segment I like to call Brownie Bites. It's going to be 3 questions, Jake, rapid fire style. Explain as necessary your answers. We'll start off with this. Who's the best player you've ever coached?
Oh boy. Oh my gosh. I'm going to answer this strictly as a head coach because I've had so many great players over the years, but I'm going to call it a tie. I'm going to call it a tie between Lucas Herseg, who was a second-round selection last year by Milwaukee, and Daniel Comstock. I think both of those guys just did such a great job here. They were such a pleasure to coach, and there's no wonder they're both getting paid to play right now. They were incredible. And
2 of the best players in program history to throw on top of that. What is the craziest road trip story that you've experienced that you can tell on camera?
I'd have to say my first year here as the head coach. We were in Canada, and I wore a sweatshirt, and it was a Volcom sweatshirt. And Mac Boone, he was a freshman that year, and he was just wearing me out, saying like, "Sweet Volcom, bro." And making fun of me because I was wearing a more of a youthful clothing brand, because apparently I'm old. And so I wanted to get him back. So as we were leaving the country, I saw Mac Boone's passport, and I just did the right thing and I stole it. And I stored it in my bag, and we're driving to the border, and I get this text from Mac Boone. He's just panicking. Like, "Coach, I don't know where my passport is." Freaking out. I don't know if I'm going to get back into the country. So I let him sweat it out as long as legally possible. I don't know if it was legal to steal it in the first place, but I let him sweat it out and eventually gave it back to him. But, it's a message to the group, let the head coach wear what he wants to wear. I want to wear that sweatshirt. I thought it was comfortable. I didn't really care about the brand, but I got worn out for it, so got him back.
So now the question is, has he gotten you back for that?
Oh, yeah, it's kind of a back and forth that's been going on for a few years, but it's always a good time.
Now, the final question, who is the one player on your team that you would not want to face in bowling?
Honestly, I would have to say Tagawa, because Tagawa already throws, kind of from the side, so I think he can pick it up pretty easily, and I just don't know if I could stomach it if Tagawa beat me. It would be really tough for me. So I would avoid Tagawa in bowling for sure.
We're going to have to get back out on the lanes here pretty soon, some point during the season, and
Absolutely.
We'll give you an update on it when it happens so I can rub it in when I beat him again next
I look forward to it. I haven't played in a while, so.
Well, neither have I, so I guess we'll both be a little bit rusty, and we'll fight it out till the end.
All right.
Jake, thanks so much for joining me.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
thanks for having me.
And thank you for tuning in to the first ever episode of Unrooted Baseball Style. Next week, we will be featuring one of the Oaks baseball players, and we'll talk about the opening portion of the season on the road. They kick off January 28th, and they'll be up in Northern California, 2 games against Simpson and 1 game against Corbin. I'm Brian Brownfield. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you again next week.
No doubt gonna lay my claim. You put in work and just wait and let it all unfold. Straight from the soul, now I stick to my goal always.